I'm Betty Keys, a Comal Master Gardener, and today we're at the AgriLife Vegetable Garden. We have about 10,000 square feet here where we grow several tons of food every year that we donate to the food banks. Your gardens at the schools may be a little bit smaller, but the same ideas, the same principles of gardening still apply. I have here with me two representatives from school gardens, and let me go ahead and have them talk about what they do.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Drake. I am a parent volunteer at Memorial Elementary. I enjoy gardening with the kids, watching them eat vegetables that they've never tried before, pulling up carrots, and seeing them light up their face when they get to water and play in the soil and learn about all the different types of stuff they can grow, and that they don't come from HEB.
Hi, my name is Dina Wallace, and I'm also a parent volunteer with the PTA at Bill Brown Elementary, and I'm also very actively involved in the Student Health Advisory Council. And I am a registered and licensed dietitian, and there's nothing more rewarding in the whole entire world than teaching kids to eat fruits and vegetables, and them seeing the benefits and getting those vitamins and the minerals and the fiber. And it is very important this day and age to teach our kids to eat healthy. It fights off infection and inflammation. So it's a very deep passion. It's been a very rewarding experience, and it is so much fun. So I encourage you to get involved with your PTA and your student shack.
Right now we're at the square foot garden that we have, one of our demo gardens at AgriLife. We are going to talk today about three basic areas. The soil is extremely important. If you don't take care of the soil, you're not going to grow very much. And so it's extremely important that you think about the soil when you're planting your school garden. We're also going to talk about all. The word all refers to the fact, think ahead of time about how you're going to include all the children in working in the square foot garden. I know the first time I worked at a school garden, it was like, we're going to go plant seeds. And it was like chaos. And so think about it ahead of time a little bit about how you're going to approach it so that everybody participates. And the third area, basic area that we're going to talk about is timing, or time. It's very important to plant things at the right time. Right now it's pretty warm. You would not plant tomatoes right now. They would not mature in time for before the frost and freezes start up in the fall. So timing is very important. Okay, now as far as soil is concerned, what we have here is we have a little bit of some mounds of compost. This compost is from our compost pile. We also occasionally will buy compost or have it donated. We go to Gonzales and get their mushroom compost to get a whole trailer load full of it. Of course, that's a bit much for a school garden, but you can also buy 40-pound bags of mushroom compost from the Plant House, for example, or other stores in the area. It doesn't have to be mushroom compost. It can be any kind of compost. This is homemade, and you need to work your organic materials into the soil. Here I have some mulch, and I move that mulch out of the way because you don't want, I put it around the plants that we already had here and pushed it over to them only because you don't want to work the mulch into the soil. If you do that, then it's going to work really hard to break down the mulch, and it's going to use a lot of the nitrogen that's in the soil. What other kinds of things do you do at your gardens, your school gardens, to prepare?
One of the things is definitely utilize your children. Let your children come out and coordinate with that teacher to let them work the soil and get their tools, rip it out. We really raked very, very well. We put the mushroom compost, we utilized that. That helped our tomatoes grow amazing. The other thing is we did use some potting soil that we got. We did let it sit for a few days before we planted. So I think that helped to water, let it sit, let those nutrients mix just to get a really good mixture. And that was it, that easy.
So at Memorial Elementary, when we started putting the garden beds in, we did high-raised cinder block beds. And to save on the cost of adding soil, we worked with the Comal Master Gardeners and had a New Braunfels Landscaping Company deliver soil. We used the older older children help put that soil into the beds as well as parent volunteers. And then the little ones added mushroom compost to help work the soil and aerate it. And then we watered it, because aerating the soil and watering it is one of the most important things you do to help get your garden started.
And now Dina will talk about whether you use mulch or not and ways that you can use it in the school garden.
So for prepping your garden, the Comal Master Gardeners had a great suggestion to use mulch in several ways. And the Comal County has a great resource. They have a recycling center at Comal County Recycling Center. You can get mulch delivered through Comal ISD. You just have to put a work order in through your administrative assistant, and they will deliver mulch to your campus. We used it not only on the grounds around the beds to keep the grass from growing, but we also used it in the beds once the plants had taken, just for shade and for moisture and protection. And then also at the end of the season, we used the mulch on top of our container gardening to keep the weeds at bay through off season. But it's a great resource. I highly suggest for you to use the Comal County Recycling Center.
Okay, now we're prepping the soil. We have compost that we made right here at the garden. And Tabitha is shoveling it in. You usually want to go down about 8-10 inches. Make sure that those roots get a lot of the nutrients from the organic materials that she is putting in there. And we are going to go ahead and plant a cauliflower, because even though it's warm right now, cauliflower is a cool or cold weather vegetable, and you want it to mature in the cool season. So we're going to go ahead and take our prepared soil, and we're going to dig a hole. The hole will be a little bit larger than the transplant, which is right here, the cauliflower. And so Tabitha is planting it. Now before we put it in, you may want to give it a little boost, okay? This is some time-release fertilizer, Osmocote. You can use other fertilizers as well, but we like to put a little bit of a boost down there to help the roots get going. So we're going to go ahead and put the fertilizer in the hole. And so Tabitha is pulling the roots out a little bit so they can feel comfortable. She's planting it at the level that the soil was at. You do not plant it higher or lower. You keep it right at the level. The only plant that you can put in the ground and plant deeper and produce more roots is the tomato, because the roots will come out from the stem. But any other plants, that when you transplant, make sure you plant it at the level. And you can see Tabitha's firming the soil a little bit around. Sometimes you can put a little depression around there if you want it to hold water better. And of course, you're going to have to water this in. Okay, Dina and I now are going to plant some carrot seeds. We already did the transplant with the cauliflower. Now we're doing the carrots. Now seeds, it's very, very important that you pay attention to the size of the seeds. These are tiny, tiny carrot seeds. They're not big like a bean seed, for example. So they can't go very deep. In fact, some people will just throw them out on the ground and see what comes up and then thin them later. But one thing you can do is use a template. This is a seeding square, and what we did at Bill Brown is that I gave each child in their hand 2 carrot seeds. Then I pointed to each hole where they were to put the seeds. So we were able to take care of 6 first grade classes, over 100 kids. Every kid planted some seeds. So we're going to use the seeding square, and the advantage is that you don't have to thin so much. So they're going to plant 2 seeds. Hopefully at least one of them will grow. Later on, when they become sprouts, you're going to look and see if they're too close together. You need to thin them, okay, if both of them came up. So Dina is going to go ahead and put the seeding square down. We also had a Comal Master Gardener make her own seeding square out of wood. And Dina did a great job with some lightweight cardboard, putting holes in it and having the kids use that as a guide as to where to put the seeds in. So I'm using a spoon because they're so small. And Dina's going to put a couple of seeds in each of the red circles, which are about 2 inches apart. If you're planting big plants like cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, you're going to want to be about 12 to 18 inches apart. But when you're doing a small root vegetable like carrots or radishes, 2 to 3 inches apart works really, really well. Okay, now the most important thing after you plant seeds or transplants is to water very, very well. One thing you can do with carrots is put a piece of burlap over the carrots, and that will hold the seeds in place. Put the burlap on before you water. It'll hold the seeds in place. It'll keep the moisture in there. And it also, like it's pretty warm right now, and seeds don't germinate well when it's up in the 90s and 100s. So the burlap's going to keep the soil a little bit cooler. But we're going to go ahead and water these in right now. And by the way, I don't use burlap on anything except carrots. It just seems to help because we plant the carrots sometimes when it's pretty warm. Tabitha's going to go ahead and water.
And one way to include all the kiddos with watering is have them lying around the garden bed and count for 3 seconds, and they get to water 1, 2, 3, and then they can pass it to the next person, and it's 1, 2, 3, and that helps alleviates fighting. I didn't get my turn, and then everyone gets to have a little bit of the garden.
It's important that every kid gets a chance to participate as best you can. For us, with the first graders, we just did one class at a time. We couldn't handle over 100 kids at one time. And that worked out really, really well. One of the ways that you can make sure that more kids participate is have an insect patrol. And for us, we like to make water bottles. This is a small water bottle. I cut it with a knife, and I don't know that I want the kids to use the knife or scissors. They're kind of hard, but I left a little strip of plastic so it's still attached. So this is what I give the kids. Let them put that top third in the bottle, and now they have a really nice water catcher. If it falls in, you may need to tape it to the top, but you can collect. I'm not going to collect these bees. They're doing a wonderful job pollinating. And also, I'm not going to collect these assassin bugs. There are some assassin bugs in here that's great big with a wheel on it. It actually is a predator, and it will eat bugs that you don't want on your plants. And rather than killing every bug you see in the garden, I recommend that if it's on your vegetable plant and it's chewing holes in there, causing damage, that you have the kids use the insect collector, insect patrol. Have them get the bug into the bottle. This little hole right here, it's not going to come back out easily. And maybe go outside the garden and put them outside the garden. Because what likes to eat insects? Do you know what likes to eat? How about what's flying around? Those birds need protein for their babies and for themselves as well. And so insects provide that protein. So if they put it outside the garden rather than killing it, then perhaps a bird will have a nice lunch or dinner.
Another activity that you can do to get more children involved in the garden is to make sure everything that you plant is labeled. These are some Venetian vines and they've been cut and they last forever. They will be here, I guarantee you, years from now. And just to get the students to write what they planted. You can also have students donate popsicle sticks and have them write on there. But having them, any step that they can be involved in, just think about that because it keeps them excited. And when they see their handwriting in the garden, it makes it more fun. Just a couple other tips to make sure all the students are involved and invested in the school garden is to have a thermometer and also a rain gauge located somewhere in the bed, outside of the bed. Part of the students' TEKS are to journal every day. That is something every student starts their day off with. And so if the students can come out to the garden, whether they're at recess or PE, as they're walking through the garden, and just take note of the rainfall and take note of the temperature, that's something they can add to their journal. And it's something they can also keep track of to have like a start point and an end point, to create data points. All of that is part of the curriculum on campus. To get the funds for our gauge and for our thermometer, we did use PTA funds. The teachers can reach out and do a teacher request, and the PTA has all kinds of financial resources to help cover the rain gauge and the thermometer.
So the funnest part of gardening is when the kiddos get to harvest and taste test. That's what they're most excited about. So working with your food distributor, whoever that might be, will help you utilize the kitchen to help prep the veggies and have the children try it. The one thing that I did at Memorial that the kids loved was make a chart, and the chart had a section that was tried it, liked it, or loved it, and they each got a sticker. And after they tried it, they got to put it wherever. If they tried it but they didn't really like it, they tried it and it was okay, or they loved it. Everyone wants to try it because everyone wants to put a sticker, and it's so much fun to see them get to judge and try the different veggies.
Okay, we talked about soil, we talked about ways to include as many of the children as you can in the garden, and now we're going to talk about time or timing. I made a handout that that was sent to you, and it's called Fall School Gardens, Comal County is the first page. So if you're going to plant something this fall, these are some suggestions for you and when you might want to get them in the ground. The thing with planting right now, even though it's warm, you want to plant the cool or cold weather plants because you want them to mature in the cold or cooler weather. So that's why you'll see on the left-hand side of this document, for example, it starts out talking about beets, that beets are a cold weather plant. There's a suggested variety, the Detroit dark red, but there's other varieties as well. The best time to plant in the fall, and when I say best, it's in order to try to have your plants mature and harvested so you can plant a spring garden, okay? You can plant later than this, but you might need to hold over until January or February before you harvest. And the comment here with the beets is it's good below 26 degrees. So if you put beets in the ground now and it gets really, really cold, you should be okay. The other thing on this page is it talks about the key dates. The average first frost or freeze in New Braunfels is on November 24th. The next page are spring school gardens and suggested plantings for the spring. So I have green beans at the top. You'll see that most of the ones listed here are warm weather plants. There's a couple that are cool, like lettuce and mustard greens, so you really have to plant those early. You can't let it get really, really hot or they are not going to do well. They're going to bolt, they're going to go to seed, and you don't want that to happen. March 8th is the average last frost or freeze date in New Braunfels. But you have to come up with some varieties that are that grow quickly, and you'll notice under possible varieties and estimated maturity time, it gives you the number of days. Your tomatoes can be a really long or a short period of time. If you plant heirloom tomatoes, then it takes longer for them to mature. If you plant some of the ones that are ready, like Early Girl, cherry tomatoes, the determinate varieties are smaller and they also tend to mature earlier. But you don't want to get them in the ground until after March 8th. And if it's tomatoes, you want to use transplants. On the tomatoes, you have your determinate varieties, which means they're a little smaller and they grow to a determined size, and then they stop producing so much. Your indeterminate tomatoes will grow really tall and keep producing over a long period of time through the summer, but you're not looking to grow vegetables in the summer, so determinate and short-term tomatoes are going to be your best bet. So you want to make sure you have some flowers maybe in your garden, some herbs to bring the pollinators in. So flowers look pretty, so we've got a beautiful butterfly right there, we've got some bees on the bee balm. The last thing on the handout that I want to mention is how I look for information when I do research. So what I do when I want to know, when I have a question, I will type in Texas A&M University, and rather than spelling that all out, I go TAMU, Texas A&M University, TAMU, and whatever I'm searching for. So TAMU, large caterpillar tomato, and I will probably come up with the answer as to what's been on my plant. So that's the last thing I have on the handout, is telling you to consider that, because Texas A&M is a research-based university, and they have extremely good advice for you here in Texas as to what grows and how it grows, and just follow their advice and you'll probably be very successful.
All right, we covered soil, we covered time, and that's about all of that time we have today. So we're going to take some time and answer some questions, and anything that you have, ask us, and we'll give you our contact information if you want to email us with any other further questions.